I'm Nick Andriaki. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Madison Resources. Madison provides payroll funding and back office solutions for independent staffing companies. That's basically what we do, but I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here to introduce Pettke. He's the Chief Sales Officer at Automated Business Designs and developers of Ultra Staff Edge staffing software. He's also a former alumni of St. Lawrence High School, which is my alma mater in Burbank, Illinois. So I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with where he's from. So after working for 16 years as a dynamic leader in the staffing industry, Bob wore many hats in the staffing industry, including Director of Franchise Sales, President of Mergers and Acquisitions, and Chief Sales Officer for staffing companies that ranged in size from $35 million to $3.5 billion in sales. Bob also hosts the Staffing Buzz Network and original Ultra Staff Edge podcast. You guys haven't seen it, it is actually pretty good. The Staffing Buzz Network helps staffing and recruiting companies learn about the latest industry trends, staffing legislation, and gain valuable insights that can apply to their staffing business. The Staffing Buzz Network can be found on all major podcast platforms. So without further ado, Bob will do his thing. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bob Pettke, and yes, I work for Automated Business Designs, and we are a software ATS CRM solution. I'm not here to talk about that. In fact, I'm here to talk about what Nick mentioned, the 16 plus years I had in the staffing industry. After many years in the industry, I did make a transition into the role where I'm at now, but that was as recent as last August. So I'm sitting on all this information, and as I've talked to different people about what we do, we often start talking about staffing and sales. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about it, but like Nick said, I'm also the host of the Staffing Buzz Network, which is a podcast that is specific to the staffing community. Not about software, but about staffing. So I have a lot of people that are on here that are going to be delivering relevant information to you. Make sure, and you can even do it right now, I know phones are in hands, go to LinkedIn and connect with me. I expect when I'm done to have 10, 15, 20 requests. Connect with me on there, and you'll be able to see the podcasts as they come out. So follow me on LinkedIn. If you ever want to talk about software, there's a number for you to call. But we're going to get into it today, and we're going to really talk about staffing at 3X. So if you notice today, we have the room set up, either the Tonys or the Oscar, but you can see, and we even have some little awards here. Well, let's get through the process here. So before we even start, I'm going to start by not talking about sales at all. It's better to have to do a little exercise. I want to get your brains thinking here a little bit. So this, we're going to do an evaluation. So I want you to each picture yourself as a manager, and you're going to give a quarterly review. The quarterly review, but you're only going to review your employee on one topic. And the topic is their attendance. So with that, here is what you need to do. You need to know. So here's the expectations that your company has for attendance. So you need to have, they need to come in every day. You'll be working Monday through Saturday, so that schedule rotates a little bit. The hours are 8 to 5. They get a 60-minute paid lunch. And if they have appointments, they're expected to schedule their appointments after hours or take PTO. With me so far? All right. So that being said, I'm going to give you facts of the person that's sitting in front of you that you're going to go ahead and give this review to. So here's how it's going to work. The person that you're talking to, they get adhered to the rotating schedule Monday through Saturday. They did that. They were there. They went on the right date to the right time and did all of it correctly. They showed up appropriately. They arrived at 8 o'clock every single time during that quarter, so they were 100% compliant. They ended their day at 5 o'clock. They never, ever left early. 60-minute lunch, they never stayed a second longer. and they followed the PTO, right? They had to take some time off, or they scheduled things. They did that 3 times. So with that said, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest, we've now seen the criteria, we have now seen what that employee actually performed. On a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest, who would give them a 5? Hands high, I need hands high. Okay, higher. Okay. Who would give them a 4? Okay. Who would give them a 3? Okay. And then anyone below a 3? No, I don't think so. Okay, good, keep that in mind. Next person, say, now we're going to review somebody else. And for those of you who answered less than a 5, this will make some sense to you. You're probably going to have your pets nodding here a little bit. But in this next example, you know, this person was 110% compliant, meaning not only did they come in on time, but they came in early and stayed late. They didn't do it because they did something wrong with their work. They asked permission and they arranged that with their manager. Because the work was too busy and they wanted to help carry some of the load. So they arrived at 8 o'clock, but actually they even arrived earlier sometimes, again, to make sure that we're in compliance, right? You know, they ended their day, sometimes they stayed late. They never left early, again, stayed late. They were always good with their lunch. Sometimes they were taking shorter lunches. So, you know, the last point I want to make here is they also follow with you. So on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest, hands up high, who will give them a 5? And there's some hands that are just not moving right here. Yeah. Little hands. Right, so I don't think anybody would do that. So here's the reason. So, you know, there are people that are going to think a 3. I'm sorry, there's people that are going to think a 5 on that first scenario. And really what that is if we look back at that, you know, what they did is all they did, and I think those who rated them a 3, they're going to think all they did was what they were expected to do, right? Right? So they expected them to come to work like I'm supposed to come to work. At 8, I'm supposed to leave. At 3, I'm supposed to take. All they did was what they expected to do, and they did it. So sometimes when we want to give a person like this a 5, you know, we find ourselves in a place and space where we're starting to celebrate average. Right? We're starting to celebrate mediocrity a little bit here. And it's really the world that we live in, right? I mean, you have to go above and beyond in order to be successful. So the point with this little exercise is that we're going to talk about this with staffing, and we're going to talk about it with sales, is that average is not exceptional. In fact, we often confuse average effort with an exceptional effort. More importantly, is average is just fine. There's a lot of average people in this world that do a lot of average things, and they make our world go around. How many would agree with me that in order to be successful at staffing, sales, and recruiting, you have to bring above average effort every day? What's your name right there? Come on up here. Antoine, you are the first winner. Michelle, if you can please present Antoine with the first award on the red carpet. Ladies and gentlemen, Antoine. Antoine, where are you from? Antoine from Minneapolis. So I'm going to get you on video. These are pretty good controls up here. Ladies and gentlemen, Antoine, congratulations on being our first award winner, because yes, you does require above average talent. You can have a seat. So, you know, you need to have above average effort to be successful, both in sales and operations. You know, there's a lot of average people, like I said, in this world, and they do a lot of things. So I'm not going to name what they do, because I don't want to offend anybody. But there's a lot of average folks that make our world go around. But to be successful at this, you have to be better than average, day in and day out. So if your average is not a notch above average, you know, my dad used to tell me, well, I'm just going to be a little bit better than everybody else. If you're this much better than average, you're now more above average. And if you're going to bring that effort and more, you're going to be successful. This is the space and place where we want people that are coworkers to thrive and survive. With that said, we're going to go to something a little different here, because we're not even in Act 1 yet. But we want to talk about making sure that we have a plan. So when it comes to sales, there's a lot of folks that in sales win. Well, one of the things that I can tell you in order to be successful is that you have to have a plan. When you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So you have to have a plan each day. You have to time block. You have to make sure that you stick to your plan. You have to make sure that you execute your plan. And you have to share your plan with your team. So if you're doing these things, you are ready for Act 1. And Act 1 is the thrill of the hunt. So again, it's nice to know that we all agree that what we do, we're all above average people instead, right? With that said, let's get into the process. I'm going to throw a lot of information at you in this time. That's a lot. It might feel like you're drinking from a water hose. If you've got questions, you can raise your hand. Somebody will go ahead and acknowledge it, and then I'll break when we get a chance to ask that question. But let's get started about qualifying prospects. So the system says here that based on what you know so far, you have to be able to determine, can you fill these positions? So maybe we're a company that just does logistics. So that means we have people that make things and move things, pickers, packers, sorters, and those types of things. They don't make things, they move things. So I need to make sure that I'm going after the right type of client. Very basic stuff. Most of this information you've probably heard before, but I'm going to go ahead. People might have their blinders on. I'm going to turn the flashlight on, and we're going to point you in some different directions as some reminders, and you might pick up some new things along the way. You want to make sure that if you're qualifying somebody, this is qualifying, this is not even prospecting. We're trying to figure out who are we going to talk to. We want to make sure, ask them, have they used staffing in the past? And, do they have openings? You can also, before you call on somebody, either on the phone, or if you go on site, if that's kind of your jam, check job boards, check their website, and see if they have positions that are open in the bank. So you also need to know your target audience. So what does that mean? It means you need to figure out who are the decision makers, right? Who are the people that are going to be in charge of making a decision in the event that you're going to have a chance to meet with somebody, share why you're going to be the right staffing partner of choice. You want to figure out who they are. So how do you do that, or how do you consider that? I got a question. Who thinks you should contact HR? Show hands. Show me somebody. I got 1, 2. Who am I missing? 3. Who says the best? I want to hear what you have to say.
Depends on a certain type of position and what the company does.
Okay.
Sometimes I've had this in my experience. I don't know quite still.
I haven't trained that voice, so I guess I'll just talk about it.
It depends on, again, so I have a situation where I have to work with a client here locally, and you have to go through HR. If you go through HR, you risk ruining or just harming that relationship, right? So I would love to go to the line manager, the customer service manager, but it has to go through. They're kind of like the gatekeeper,
Sure.
so to speak. I do have other clients where I work directly with, in terms like the team lead or plant managers or executive.
So we're talking about like light industrial logistics types of positions?
Yes.
All right. What's your name?
Joe.
Joe, where are you from?
Kelly Services here in Chicago.
Joe, come on up and get the prize.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, Joe, thanks for participating today. Congratulations. What do you think? Red carpet, brother. You can zoom in on this one, Joe. All right. Yeah, let's give it up for Joe. Okay. Sometimes I've heard, and I said this to somebody in the room when I said it, it was an HR person. Sometimes people think HR stands for human resistance. Anybody show hands on that? Yeah, keep raising your hands. You might get a beautiful award today if you're raising your hands, but not this time. All right, so yeah, I talk about here, it says going 3 deep and 3 wide. I should probably reverse that and say 3 wide and 3 deep. So if you're calling on a company, if you can, and sometimes companies are small, so small you can't go 3 deep and 3 wide, or 3 wide and 3 deep. And what I mean by that is maybe you talk to the HR person, maybe you talk to the plant manager, maybe you talk to a shift supervisor, right? And then if you can go even deeper, you can. Now I can tell you that there are times when I've tried to do this in the past, my teams have tried to do this in the past, and they're not getting anywhere. So if you are strategic, and I don't have it on the screen, sometimes, depending on the size and scope of the company, the kind of business that they do, you could be inclined to go all the way to the top. If you get a hold of a CEO or an owner of a mid-sized company, and if you can go ahead and deliver them a good value proposition, we'll talk about that in a second. If you can deliver them a good value proposition, you position yourself to sell the initial thought to them, and instead of you having to get to these people down below, they might refer you to somebody. As a matter of fact, they might have somebody call you. Isn't it so much better if the boss tells somebody to call you? So true story real quick, I was selling in Long Island, New York. It was like light industrial type staffing. We couldn't get anywhere. And I told the guy that I was with, I was coaching him at the time, I said, we're gonna talk to the owner of this company, not a big company, probably about 55 people. I said, we're gonna talk to the owner. So he's like, yeah, whatever. So we pulled up, and just to my chagrin, just to my luck, we pulled up, and this beautiful Mercedes parked in reserved parking at the same time. The owner pulls up. And we're trying to get it. He says, can I help you? He says, get that person's name and information. Prospecting methods. So again, now we've qualified people. So again, sorry, this is just very basic stuff. Let's remind ourselves. So we can go to the phone, we can go door to door, social media, chamber meetings, related affiliations. If we're doing manufacturing and logistics, we could be looking at getting into the manufacturing and logistics associations. If you're doing HR, you can go ahead and get the SHRM. If you're doing customer service and call centers, you can probably get into different affiliations that do that type of work as well. So, another thing that's really big, I don't know what kind of success people have had trying to get business through LinkedIn for your applicants. But if you go to LinkedIn and you check with people that you know that work at companies, you can go ahead and reach out to them, or ask a friend to reach out to them. Or just ask people that you know in your lifestyle and say, hey, does your company ever use staffing? And talk to those people. Again, reminders. These are things that we probably all thought about at one point or another. I'm going to put this up here. Has anybody heard of Sense? Who's using Sense in the room? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you, Heather Pettke. Come on up. Because guess what? You get an award today because you are a Sense user. Ladies and gentlemen, Heather's from Hughes Staffing. Congratulations on the award. I will not do 20 years on you like I did. No, I'm going to be right here like this. All right, you can zoom in on us. Give me a thumbs up when we're good, Jennifer. Ladies and gentlemen, Heather. Welcome to the stage. So Sense is a tool that integrates with most ACSs. We've got a bulletproof integration with Sense on our software. Again, I'm not talking about our software, but we have it. It's a great tool that you can use to go ahead and market to your existing candidates, your existing employees, and you can also utilize, I think, a chatbot. They have some integrations that you can do for sales as well. You can do some marketing campaigns where you set things up, maybe a 5-week marketing campaign, and you can set it and forget it. And it'll go ahead and do that. So if you want more information, just talk to me after me. I have my number on that. We're going to be connected on that. Make sure you do that. What can you say to get to the right person, right? So sometimes you walk in the door or you get on the phone, and there's a couple of different ways to go about it. So some people have very harsh or canned dialogue that they use when they're trying to get a hold of somebody. But what are some things that you can say? One of the things that's worked over the course of time for people that I've worked with, coast to coast, is instead of coming in with some kind of a slick sales pitch, people will ask, I'm hoping you can help me. They walk in, if that's the type of your business you do, you're on the phone, and you get a hold of somebody. And let's face it, oftentimes when somebody reaches out to us, and we kind of know they're a salesy type person, everything gets a little tense, right? I'm not going to say it's tense, but we get tense, right? And in part, it's because we're thinking, here it comes. They're going to present us with something that, we don't want to do. And that's because they think you're in control of the conversation. But when you ask somebody for help, you have now given what I call the baton of power. You're saying, listen, I need your help. You are now in charge of this conversation. Now, when you do it, in essence, they are, but because they're being strategic about it, you're still driving it until the point where the conversation ends. So if you can say something like, I'm hoping you can help me. Or you can say, I need some help. You can say, let's see, can you tell me who I need to talk to about any open jobs? So sometimes one of the techniques we would use on the phone is we would have somebody say, can you tell me about this open position that you have, or can you tell me about the open positions that you have? And without saying that we're an applicant, it could often be construed that the person, you, are actually looking for a job. So you might be able to get through that way. I don't want to be twisted, and I don't want to actually come out and be convoluted to make it seem like we're being misleading. But at the same time, we're going to go to the line, and I'm going to say, can you tell me who I can talk to about this open job I have? If that person asks you, are you from a staffing company, or what's the purpose? Be honest with them and give it to them, right? Do everything above board and honest. But that oftentimes can get you through to the next level. Here's another one you can say, I'm not sure who to talk to. I work for a company that helps people find jobs. So you've asked for help. They say, how can I help you? And you say, I work for a company that helps people find work. That's what we do, right? Temp to hire, direct hire. We're trying to help people find jobs for the greater good for them, for the greater good for us, for the greater good for a potential client that we partner with. When you make a connection with a decision maker, make sure you know, if you can, a key factor tidbit about the person you're speaking with. Make it look like you've paid some time and attention to what they do and that they're important to them. Make them feel important. They should be the most important person you're talking to at that time, and make sure that you've done your heavy lifting up front to do that if you can. Sometimes you find yourself in a spot where the decision maker's right in front of you, then you gotta kind of go from there, but you have to use your own instincts that got you to the position where you're at that point. If you know things about the company, if you know things about, I can't see it in my back. Talk more about any open job recs you see. You can also start to talk real quick about what differentiates you from your competitors. What are things that make us different? Because at some point, we're going to talk about it again. People will say, what's a response when you say you're a staffing company? Has anybody ever heard a response where they kind of throw something back at you real quick? Anybody? We don't work with staffing agencies at this point. No, in the back.
I had someone tell me, you're the necessary evil.
You're a necessary evil, okay? Anybody else? Anybody ever heard something that made you see? You guys are all the same. Who's heard it? Oh, you can't keep it. Who else has heard it? What have you heard? What kind of words did they use to it? You all fish from the same pond. You all do the same thing. You're no different. All guys are all the same. So we're going to talk about having, what makes us different than anybody else. That's going to be a key part of what we're going to talk about as we continue through the process. What was your name? Yeah. Is it still your name? Yes. Yeah, come on up. Let's give it up for Natalie. Natalie, where are you from? Naperville. And who do you work with? Sterling Engineering. We are so glad you're here. Yeah, hold it high. Rock and roll. Moving right along. So, what can you say that makes you different? You can say, listen, we do evening recruiting calls. We're going to talk about a value statement here. We're going to talk more about that evening recruiting calls in a minute. But do people know what a value proposition is or a value statement? Who doesn't know? And it's okay if you don't. Everybody knows. I don't have to give an award for somebody not knowing something. That's great. All right. So here's an example talk a little bit about how a value proposition gets formulated and what you need to know. So it says decision makers only care about how or what you are selling can positively affect them. So value propositions are simple statements that spell out a clear, tangible result that they will get from using your service or solution. So this is something specific. So when you do a value statement, you know, if you have a chance to articulate what makes you different than everybody else, that's great. But if you can incorporate the fact that what you're going to do is going to have a direct reflection on what they do, you're going to be in a good space and place where they're going to want to continue to listen. So here's an example of one. It says at Place Consultants, we continue the recruiting process when our competitors log off for the day. In fact, we qualify more candidates after 7 p.m. than our competitors do between 9 and 5. This means that we can help get those open recs filled quicker, better, faster. Who's doing recruiting calls after 7 o'clock each and every day? Got a couple of people doing it, right? Again, and I'm not saying that you gotta go and start doing that. I'm just using this as an example, right? So you can see this, and so not only do you say this is what it is, but you say this is the benefit. So this is also part of the process, and we talk about this internally as we do what we do as an organization, about selling features and benefits. Oftentimes people will sell the feature, like, you know, we have free timekeeping. Okay, great. But what's the benefit? People will, you know, say different things like, you know, if you're trying to sell this chair, people will say, this chair is sturdy. You should buy it because it's sturdy. Well, no, you don't want to buy it because it's sturdy. You want to buy it because it's going to last long. Its color is neutral. If it's dirty, it doesn't look so dirty. You want to talk about features and benefits and anything and everything that you do when you're trying to do your value proposition through your sales process and as you close. Do you have a value statement? Does anybody have a value statement they want to share? There might be a trophy on the line. Man. Anybody? I had a feeling this was going to happen. This was a bad question. Come on, somebody give me a value statement. Shelby, you have one? Oh! Kevin, why don't you give me your value statement?
Well, this wasn't planned. We were hoping one of you guys would volunteer because I'm with ABD. So I would say a value statement is we are a front and back office solution, and we help folks get the job done better, quicker, faster. And with the customizable solution, it allows you to do what you need to do, when you need to do it, and you're not constrained to certain workflows. So the value statement there,
This is what we do, and this is why it's beneficial for you. And you do not get that. All right, we'll keep going. So we're going to talk about making a transition from giving our value proposition to securing a meeting, driving the process. You need to be assertive, not aggressive, but you need to be assertive. You know, so if you give a value statement to somebody, then you need to be able to have something next. You need to be able to say it with confidence, and you want to suggest certain dates and times. Here's an example. At Place Consultants, we continue the recruiting process with our competitors long after the day is over. In fact, we qualify more candidates after 7 than our competitors during the day. This means we can get those positions quicker, better, faster. Here's the example of the remaining part. What I'd like to do is set up a time. I'd like to set up a proper time where we can learn about your local positions, we can share how we will formulate a strategic game plan, and then we can deliver if we get candidates quicker, better, and faster. More faster than you're accustomed to. So you want to be able to have your value proposition, and when you kind of have a vibe, maybe they don't say anything in response, or if they're saying then you want to go for this where we're going to make a 1-2 transition. You got to be quick, you got to be ready, you got to be confident. So you got to be thinking on your feet. In staffing, we always have to be thinking on our feet. What are you going to do next, and when are you going to do it? Anybody manage salespeople in the room? Okay, a couple people do it. Anybody manage themselves as salespeople? Okay. So I can tell you the biggest gap, the biggest hole I have seen, and this is that mediocre average to the above average sales individual. This is the hole in their swing. This is their blind spot. Is they might have a tremendous meeting, but they cannot answer the question afterward, what are they going to do next and what are they going to do? So you never want to end a conversation with a prospect without a scheduled follow-up confirmed. So you want to secure the meeting and be persistent. You want to make sure that you're presenting a date and a time. You want to be able to send an invite. Otherwise your deal will likely disappear. So if your next step is ever I'm waiting to hear back from a prospect, you do not have a next step. And time kills deals. Let's say it please. Everyone at one time. Time kills deals. Look at it. Time kills. All right, I'm doing real bad. Do it for me.
Time kills
See, all you needed was not many people home. Excellent. So that's what it is. Time kills deals. Any time that goes by, if you don't have something scheduled, you're going to lose out on that opportunity potentially. Because somebody else is going to come in. Somebody else is going to come in and they're going to secure that time. And like I said, this is what separates the average to the above average salesperson. So sometimes whoever feels like they're trying to nail, does it ever feel like, have you ever heard the term, who's heard the term, nailing jello to a tree? Who's heard that? It sounds impossible, right? You see it? You see it? There's a nail, there's a tree, there's a jello, it just didn't work, right? So I can tell you, it is possible to nail jello to a tree. If you can nail jello to a tree, you can secure a next step. Now, if somebody's just simply not interested, that's a whole different topic for a whole different time. But this is where you're driving the process, controlling the process, and you've got something planned next. Moving into activity, before we go into that, anybody have any questions or comments about anything that I've talked about? I'll open it up right now. Pettke.
So, and I think we're doing our vision statement, but we're kind of more on like the crystals of a vision statement catered towards like each different client, or is it more like a mission statement for like our
Vision statement, is that something different than a value proposition in your eyes? Okay.
Or sorry, not vision, value statement.
Value statement. Okay. So the first thing that I would start to think about is what makes you different than everybody else.
Very new, so I would say that we really like to stand out with disability and relationships with people like that would be
Okay.
involved in a lot of like chambers in our cities that we are.
So if I'm a prospective client, what makes you different that I want to work with you over anybody else? Is it what you're saying now, or is it something different altogether? Okay, so maybe you have a recruiting process that's a little bit above and beyond what the competition does. Maybe you have a personalized interview or a personal assessment of somebody that you do. You want to figure out what that part of it is. You want to figure out what is it that we do. Why are our people a little bit better than everybody else? Once you figure that out, you can then go ahead and say, you can share, for example, like I would say something along the lines of, that's what it was. If I get better people than other people, my value proposition, again, I'm winging it right now, but I've done this for a minute, so let's see how I do. I would say, hey, listen, a lot of people are working with us right now because we're getting people that are a little bit more sticky. In other words, they're more likely to show up and stay there. We know this is a common problem in the staffing industry. And the way we're doing this is we're looking at their work history, we're doing reference calls, and in addition to that, we're looking for longevity in their prior career. So as you can see, if you work with us, you're going to get people that are going to show up and you're going to be more efficient. So I would figure out what it is that we did that is different. And I use the fact that we're doing some type of a personality test, we're doing background screens and references. Put that in there and then say, why is it beneficial? So as you're crafting that, we can talk more offline. But those are the types of things that you can start to think about as you formulate that. Anybody else? Questions? All right, moving right along. Anybody have heard of spin selling? Raise your hand. Say yes. No? Got a hand. Got a hand. So to give you an idea, so there's many methods of selling, but the two that are kind of out there and have been kind of brought into the staffing community over the years is spin selling versus consultative selling. So I asked you, have you heard about it? Really what it is, there's a guy named Neil Ragland who wrote a book, and it was a big craze in sales, not only staffing, but across the board. And it was, the idea of what they did was called spin selling. It was in the late 80s, and it's a pretty good concept. It says, you know, it's the methodology that focuses on asking prospects the right questions at the right time, and using active listening as a technique that involves, you know, concentration and focus effort, deeply comprehend what the other person is saying. So you go in, you ask the questions, they're very on point, they're very appropriate, and they're very specific to that job. And there's been billions of dollars in sales that have been won using this methodology. But then there's another one that came out probably sometime in the 90s, early 2000s. And again, all of these things have probably been around forever, but they put labels on it, people put books on it, and they're more popular. What about consultative selling? So consultative selling, so this is a sales process or approach that prioritizes relationship building and open dialogue to address the customer's needs. The conversation is focused on customers' challenges and goals rather than products and features. So in other words, I want to know, as you're my prospect, what's important to you. A guy named Simon Sinek, he wrote a book and he tells a story and he did a TED Talk on the why. Figure out what is the why. Everybody heard of the book, what is the why? Everybody's saying that from the why, right? Round of applause for why. All right, so you've heard of the why. So that's part of this process. So make no mistake, the questions that you do in spin selling are very important, right? You got to ask those basic questions. But at the end of the day, if you're able to articulate to your prospect in order to make them a client, what's in it for them? What is it in for me? This is where we separate the kids from the adults. So what consultative selling does is it combines the right questions that's been selling, and then with the prioritization of asking customer need questions as you prepare to address the prospect's day-to-day trials and rewards from a job well done. So let's look at two key factors here. So you want to build rapport with your prospect. So, you know, some different things. You want to also ask consultative questions. This means that we ask questions that our competitors don't ask. As a result, we begin the process of becoming a valued partner instead of just another staffing provider. The biggest communication problem is that we don't listen to understand, is that we listen to reply. We talked about this at lunch. People say they're good listeners, but we listen not to understand, but we listen to reply. And we lose out on so much when we do that. There's two things that I've seen in sales that people struggle with most. Number one is listening. Number two is documentation. Let me say it again for those who don't listen well. Listening and documentation. So, you know, here's what it comes down to. Who do people buy from? Say it again. And who gave this man a copy of my presentation before we got here? People they like, and people they trust. All right, no trail for, let's give a round of applause for our music. Bill, right? Bill. All right. Here are questions in our industry, and I'm going to view this maybe towards the temp to hire logistics, customer service. Here are questions that everybody asks. What are your shift times? What are the hours? What's your pay rate? What background check is required? Who do the temps report to? You know, these are important questions, of course. These are really, you can't fill an order if you don't know at least these questions if them are. I got heads nodding, right? But I'm going to tell you, there's probably another 10 or 15 questions that are very much like this, very factual, more of the spin selling questions. Tell me about how your operation works. What often happens is your average salesperson, and they can win business on this, they ask these kind of questions and they stop. They get all the facts and then they stop. I'm going to give you some examples of consultative questions. So while you're asking the questions that I first showed you, you want to start to ask these questions. What specific skill sets are required? We talked about that. But how is your job affected when you're not fully staffed? Now I'm thinking about you. Are you personally dinged if you don't hit KPIs? Does this affect you when you don't get product out the door? Do you get pulled off your day job when you're short-staffed? I'll even say, when you get pulled off your day job, who does your day job? You know, do you get out of the office at the end of each day and have dinner with your family? Very few people are asking these questions, and when you ask these questions, you are now different than 98% of what else is out there. Can you see that?
We call that getting in for customers operating reality.
Getting into the customer's operating reality. This is what separates the kids from adults when you ask these questions. Okay? One more thing. When you're done going through all of these questions that you go through, right? You want to make sure that you are repeating back the notes that you took of the questions that you've learned. So in other words, maybe somewhere along the way I learned that that they're trying to get people from the current staffing company, they can't read a ruler. I'll be like, listen, so one of the struggles you currently have is you're getting people that can't read a ruler. Okay, I read it back. Now I know this is a pain point. Here's an example. You know, what are the specific skills? You know, maybe you're looking for people that need to read a blueprint. You know, how does this affect your job when you're not staffed? You know, stress the high. You know, you might stress that it's a high, and the team becomes motivated when something like that happens. So that might be your question. They might say, stress is high when I don't get people in here that can read a blueprint. Or if they're not really getting their KPIs, yes, my bonus depends on my KPIs, and I haven't had a bonus in 18 months. You know, as you conclude your meeting, make sure that you follow the plan. You want to make sure you know, what are you going to do next? When are you going to do it? Here's an example. Hey, thank you for meeting with me today. What I'd like to do is take this information back to my office, share it with my team, and formulate a custom plan on how we can service your proposal and do a proposal for you to discuss how we can move forward. How does 10 o'clock on Tuesday? Get it on the calendar, get it booked, send it out. All right, I hear things are going, so I got to move a little quicker, but I'm going to stay on point. You know, when you're having a meeting, what's a proposal? That's where you go ahead and take all the information that you've gathered through the whole process, and you go out and you provide them a service plan. We're not going to tell them how you're going to service it, but you're also going to tell them how much it's going to cost. You want to set expectations. You want to be able to recap your last meeting, address any things that you discovered, offer solutions. So what's one way to make sure that you do that? Well, you can recap your last meeting. You say, hey, the last time that we met, you know, we recognize that certain things aren't happening in order for you to do. This was the ruler test. Last time we met, somebody couldn't read a ruler. Then we say to them as part of our proposal, so we come back, if we give them this ruler test, can they do the job? And they say yes. And then we say, is your current provider doing that? They say no. And then we say, can you see how when we do this, we're going to improve your life and you might even get a chance to go home early? Yes. If they say yes to us, no to them, yes to us. Yes, no, yes. I'm going to get right to the point here. Again, at the very bottom, repeat the process. Get them to say yes to us, no to them, yes to us. Now, sometimes people will object. People might say, you guys are all the same. What I want you to think about is turning their objection into your objective. If my objection is you guys are all the same, my objective is to say no, we're not, and to prove why. So you want to turn objections into objectives. And I'm going to put on here some takeaways. I'm going to go through them real quick. Average is, you got to be above average. You want to make sure that you walk away with a connection. What are you going to do next? What are you going to do it? I'm going to put these all on. If you want to take a picture of them, they're fine. That'd be great. But again, I think one of the most important things I want you to walk away from today, know what you're going to do next, what you're going to do, and be different. Be different by having differentiators, and be different by asking those questions that very few people ask. And lastly, get to this: say yes to us, no to them, and yes to us. I've said this about 15 times. Always know what you're going to do next and when you're going to do it. And with that, everybody, we are done. Thank you. I'm Ron Pettke. Thank you for being here today, and enjoy the rest of your day.